Sure. Thank you, both to Auth0 but especially to my dear friend James for this invitation and this opportunity to share. I am Meka Egwuekwe. I am a former software developer of 19 years, but I am currently the full-time executive director for CodeCrew. We are a nonprofit based in Memphis that teaches kids and adults to write software. We teach them to think computationally. We try to get kids to pursue college, career, and entrepreneurship in computer science. We try to get adults into entry-level jobs as software engineers.
And that has been an initiative. When I moved back to Memphis, which has now been 4.5 years, one of the first things I did with just trying to get back into the tech community in Memphis was reach out to Meka. We had never met before. I went down to the startup space that you were in at that point. And we just met and kind of talked about community and the things I had done and the things I was interested in, and have kind of maintained a relationship since then. And it's such a special thing to be able to give back to the community in so many ways. And that's kind of the focus of this stream, this one today, especially, is investing in your community. So you mentioned like CodeCrew and the goals of being able to teach students, the younger generation. If I get to now, I don't know if I'm old enough to say that or not, but the younger generation, how to program and how to build skills that can potentially change lives down the road. What was your inspiration for that? Like, how did you get the idea that you could give back in a way that you could teach people skills and then be able to leverage that to make different things happen in their lives?
Sure. Well, I'll say that I never exactly set out to found a nonprofit in computer science education, but I give a lot of credit to Kimberly Bryant, who is the founder of Black Girls Code. And it's a great program based in California. She was kind enough to allow me and some others to launch the chapter in Memphis back in 2012. And so I led that chapter for about 2.5 years. Really, I was just trying to sign my daughters up for this great program. But I found myself leading in the chapter and left that to found CodeCrew, where we had support from the Memphis Grizzlies Foundation to bring a summer camp to the Lester Community Center in the heart of the city, an economically challenged neighborhood at that. And so I sort of found my way into this space because while I'd always had a passion for youth and been involved with youth in different ways, volunteered at different schools, this pathway, first with Black Girls Code and now with CodeCrew, of marrying my training of in computer science and software development with community engagement with young people, especially, just sort of kind of came together that way. And so we launched CodeCrew in May of 2015, with that support from the Memphis Grizzlies. And a year later, I was quitting my job to do this full time. So I've been at this now full-time executive director almost 5 years. In June the 1st will be my anniversary, I guess.
It's like when you said 2015, I guess I knew that if I thought about it and tried to play back the year. So that seems like so long ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long.
Yeah, it's like yesterday, and at the same time, it was a long time ago. I mean, we'd all be rich if we could have predicted what 2020 was like, for example. And I'm sure we all feel like we've gone through a lot in just the past year.
What?
But that's the story of how I found myself in the computer science education space.
Okay. And you mentioned being a software developer, I think, for 19 years. I was kind of wondering if you want to talk a little bit about your perspective on having so much experience there and then being able to leverage that. Because if someone just really wanted to give back and they're starting out their career, there's certainly a lot of things that they can offer, but there's also a perspective of someone that not only has been a developer, but also a professional for 19 or 20 years, right? That comes that you can get across more things than just the learning how to code. Did that play any? I guess it wasn't intentional because you kind of fell into it just by having done some other things. But how maybe did it contribute to your ability, I think, to pass on other wisdom, I guess, or plan the things that you did, the activities that you did?
Sure. So I do certainly credit my experience having been a 19-year software developer. Most recently, I was director of software development at Lokion Interactive. And so I had some, at least when it came to managing software teams from the technical perspective, I had some management experience in that regard that was helpful. Certainly being in an industry for 19 years, you learn quite a few things about professionalism, and so these personal benefits to me, we have tried to infuse into the CodeCrew experience for both kids and adults, right? That, like for example, for the kids, they're learning how to build mobile apps or build and program robots or program drones, but they're also learning how to present those things and how to communicate to others. So we integrate that heavily, right? That there's a certain professionalism. It's not enough to just be proficient in the technology, but the technology has a purpose to solve problems for human beings, and you need to be able to communicate that. And so that's infused in what we do with kids, and then also with adults. Our adult program is a 6-month coding boot camp that trains adults to be entry-level software engineers in that time, and they're not valuable to employers on the strength of the technology skills alone, right? That you still need to be able to communicate to others what you're doing. You need to be able to think critically and solve problems in creative ways. And so a lot of these, what we call essential skills, some may call soft skills, are very much infused into the CodeCrew experience. And it's very rooted in not just my own professional career, but we've got a team of 14 now, and they all make their contributions to the betterment of the students that we serve.
And I think you've had a few of previous or former students are part of the staff now. Is that right? At least a couple?
Yes, that's true. Though I guess a couple is now down to one.
Okay.
I'm proud because one of our adult code school graduates joined us as a full-time instructor, but her last week with us was last week.
Okay.
And she actually landed a job as a full-time software engineer. And so she's doing that for a company that's based in New York, but she still gets to live in Memphis, given that she can work remotely. And so that's been great for her, and that's exactly what we wanted for her. And so we're that being said, we are hiring 1 or 2 more instructors. So so that's and then we've got another graduate who is on our team who is actually teaching on the high school side for us, and he showed a great knack and aptitude for teaching. And so instead of him becoming a software engineer, he's opted to become a high school computer science teacher.
And that's to the whole conversation about, like, and I say this, like, this is verbatim what I say a lot, especially to my students. Being a successful software developer is about a lot more than just writing code. It's being able to communicate, being able to lead, to make decisions, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really cool. And I've seen this happen many times because you've had students come through and they've been TAs for the next set of students. I've seen that happen several times.
Absolutely.
To see that you're able to keep paths at different variations of paths available and present them to people, including going through CodeCrew to move on to maybe something else. That's really cool. And I'm really glad that is a part of that, because I think it's easy to overlook it. Like, if you teach programming, you forget that, like, hey, you actually have to be able to communicate and talk in an interview and all these other things that go along with it. Taylor Johnson in the chat said that Jacksonville could definitely use something like that. And one of the questions I asked is, I'm kind of wondering, for people that are in the chat, do you have any like similar programs and or boot camps that are in your areas that you live in? I'd love to know that in the chat. And then Taylor Johnson asked, said, maybe I missed this, but are you partnering with local/remote companies? So I guess the question is kind of, what does the hiring process look like, or trying to get hired, or the interview process, and what are the relationships that you have in place to help facilitate that?
Sure. So absolutely, we're partnering with local companies. Some are more formal than others. For example, we have a great program that we're with Regional One Health, which is the county health system here. But like, as you all know, technology is pervasive everywhere, right? So the tech companies are, every company is a tech company to some degree, right? Including the county health system. And so we've got a student there under what we call a residency, where he's a software developer. Well, he's a graduate of our program now. Now he's a software developer for them in their residency. And then we're hopeful that they like him enough that turns into a full-time opportunity for him. We've got, the relationship with respect to local employers and CodeCrew is actually multifaceted, because not only have we been successful at getting our graduates placed to work for employers either full-time or under a residency like I described. We've got other arrangements where employers tap us for our graduates to work on short special projects for them. We're doing one with the city of Memphis and Innovate Memphis as a partnership between the two of those organizations and us for 4 of our students to actually build a system for the HCD, for the Housing and Community Development Division of the city of Memphis. And so we're doing some special projects that we call Create with CodeCrew in that way. And then also on the flip side, a number of companies have been donors to us, local companies in particular. Certainly our code school was launched on the strength of financial support from FedEx, for example, which is the largest employer here in Memphis. And so it's great. And we're building a greater rapport with more companies, and also building more confidence in the community, especially in Memphis, around this idea of getting talent from alternative means like coding boot camps. Before we launched our adult program in 2018, Memphis was the largest city in the United States that did not have a full-time coding boot camp. And so it's still a new concept relatively for employers. And so we certainly understand the hesitancy on some until they understand it a little better. But as that grows and they see our graduates placed and doing well for themselves and providing productivity gains to other local employers, that's also growing for us as well. So it's an iterative process, if you will, if I can draw on software
programming, yeah,
agile methodologies.
How many programming puns can we do in the next 15 minutes just to make it exciting?
Absolutely, yeah. We should. Is
that a challenge?
A challenge accepted. Anytime you have a programming pun, throw it in the chat as we go along with the conversation.
Well, I'm honored to be kept in the loop.
Yeah. There's 2. Somebody keep count. We could use like sound effects. We should have some sort of theme from now on in future ones. And then every time we do the pun of the day or something, we do a little ding sound effect to really emphasize it.
Sure. And let me also elaborate a little bit further on what Taylor said about Jacksonville and really other cities. We at CodeCrew are seriously looking at what our impact looks like beyond Memphis. I mean, while I mentioned, that we teach kids and we teach adults, COVID-19 has resulted in us doing a lot of things virtually. And so I admit I was originally resistant to a virtual model, but now that we've been forced into it and see that in practice, we do see that as something that will continue with us even when things get back to some sense of normal. And so last summer with our summer camps, with the programs that we do with the kids that we still do in partnership with the Memphis Grizzlies NBA team called the Grizzlies Code Camp, we had, 90% of the kids were still from the Memphis area, but we had a handful of kids from Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, Miami, different places actually do this. Our virtual hackathon, our hackathon had to go virtual last year. We had, and one of the winners was actually from Texas. And
cool.
And so that's been great. And then now with our adult program having gone virtual, we've got a lot of interest from as far away as Honduras for the adult program. And so we are giving serious thought as to what our impact is beyond Memphis in terms of those direct offerings. And then we've already impacted beyond Memphis in terms of things like policy and advocacy. Right? We were successfully getting a bill passed 2 years ago in the state of Tennessee for a statewide plan for computer science education that impacted all 1 million K through 12 kids in Tennessee. And now we're underway working with those same bill sponsors to get a requirement that every high school in Tennessee at least offer a computer science class. And we're doing that not only because we want Tennessee to be competitive, right? But there are other states where that's a challenge. And so we've already been talking with folks in Louisiana about how we can help achieve similar goals and so forth, based on the model that how we've gotten this done here in Tennessee. So our picture is, how can we make a national contribution in that regard, and still be be a complementary component to what is a multifaceted array or constellation of learning opportunities for That's it. I got it.
Yep.
Got it in there. Of opportunities for people that want to get these skills. And the last thing I'll add too is that from the beginning we've had a very strong recruitment orientation towards underrepresented groups, and that's because the demographics in Memphis are such that our largest demographics are the ones that are most underrepresented in technology. And so, if we expect to be prosperous as a city and a region, we've got to convince more kids and adults from those underrepresented groups to pursue these lucrative 21st century careers. And so, not the beautiful thing, but the contribution, I guess, we make to that is that nationally, that's a challenge. Even internationally, it's a challenge to find diverse talent. And so we think we've got a model that the rest of the country could learn from. We can certainly contribute to our country and the world improving diversity in the space.
And so much of that is just around exposure. It's people seeing people that look like them doing things and then interpreting that as, well, I could do that too. Because if you've never seen it, you don't even know, or you don't even have the idea that it's a possibility. So for that reason, like just the seeing it is so huge, is a big part of that. And then especially here in Memphis, like you said, communities very underserved nationally and probably internationally, but that's just kind of the demographics that we have in Memphis. There's a big opportunity to really change a lot of the way that people look at opportunities like this. And that especially is why it's like, one, it's like teaching people to program, but that additional layer is something that's really special for me as well. You mentioned that do you want to add something to that?
Well, I was saying thank you, but I will just add one little thing that it's seeing and doing, right? It is so like in our mobile app class, the very first thing in that 90-minute class that kids do is they create an app. And they walk out that day saying, we created an app. That's a very, very simple app that takes a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., puts it on a button, and couples a 5-second segment from one of his speeches. And they make this and run it on a tablet. And when you press the button, it says that part of the speech. But they leave knowing that app development is not rocket science. It's something they can do. It's something they learn the very first day. But yeah, they need to see themselves as tech producers, and that's what we try to encourage.
I think I probably mentioned this to you years ago when we first met, but I had done a lot of workshops with students using a drag and drop game making tool called, oh gosh, now I forgot what it's called. What is that, Sam?
There's a tool to learn development built by the MIT.
The app builder?
No, it's called
App Inventor.
No, I forgot the name as well. So I'm not much of a help here, but
Scratch.
Scratch.
Yeah.
Because I've been involved with Coder Dojo, which was also in an organization that teaches programming to kids starting 12 years old. And we would start with using Scratch just to learn them the basics of if-else and some of these basic principles. So it was a really cool tool.
Yeah, that is a really cool one. I just remembered I had used Construct 2 was the tool, but like all of these tools are similar in the concept that you can get started, and it was amazing to give them like a 15-minute intro and just let them run and do their own thing. And like I've said this, I could get on a soapbox and talk about this a lot. Like I could teach CS 101 with Construct 2. I could teach you all the things that you would learn by reading a Java textbook. I could teach you that by making games and never actually writing a line of code. And that was always really important to me, was they need to see something happen. Because if you're just reading about code, if you just print something to the console, it's not the same as like seeing a character move around or hearing something be played by clicking a button. Like if you can interact with it and you can show other people's interest just skyrockets.
Absolutely, and certainly we've seen that time and again with the thousands of kids that we've worked with here in Memphis, and we're big fans of Scratch. And thank you, Zach, for reminding us all about Scratch. And we're big fans of Construct as well. We use, I think we're using Construct 3 now, but we're
a few years since I've.
No worries. And we use that, and we use MIT's App Inventor. We also use Thunkable, which allows you to export to both Android and iOS. And so a lot of different things that we use really to, and especially for the kids who've been with us for a while. We've got kids doing Unity 3D, for example, and we're launching a class with Unreal Engine that's sponsored by the state of Tennessee and AutoZone. And so lots of great things to, pique kids' interest. And I only wish that they had these things around in the 80s when I was getting started in this.
The only introduction I had, which I wasn't even a part of, I just heard of people, they would like program their TI 83, 89, like they would program those calculators somehow. I never knew anything about it, but just people would do it in high school, and they would like install games on it and stuff. And I had no idea. And then I got to college.
Those bowling games and Super
Yeah.
Mario.
So did you do that on yours?
Yep.
Was that like your first introduction to programming?
One of the first, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I already dabbled a little bit with programming, but that was one of the first things I did.
And how, like that's such a great way to start. Like I feel like you hear so many people are like either they started on the calculator or they started on MySpace back in the day, like customizing their MySpace with HTML, CSS, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sort of missed that kind of opportunity, because when MySpace was the dominant social media platform at that time, people were making money designing other people's web pages, right? And then that turned into them. That was really their introduction to computational thinking, and at least that kind of development. So Facebook and these modern ones today, they don't quite give you that room to innovate like that.
Yeah, I think lots of people resonated with the idea of the games on the calculator. So Sam immediately perked up. Zach said mentioned Pong as one of the ones, and then one guy who's in the chat as well said he remembers helping friends get games on their calculators. If only I had the type of friends that would have helped me. All they did was show me that they had it. They didn't actually teach me how to do it or help me do it. So I wish I had. No, I had very good friends in high school.
Well, I never programmed the TI 83 or 84 to do any of those things. I was aware that you could do that, but I never did that. But my actual start in programming was on a different TI. It was on a TI 99, the TI 99 4A that a certain gentleman who's I guess locked up now was selling them. Bill Cosby was selling on television back then. But,
oh wow!
But I back in the late 83, 84, and I learned how to make my name move across the screen with a name like mine. My father's from Nigeria, and so growing up in Memphis, I didn't know any other Nigerian kids other than my brother, and you certainly didn't see my name on television. So when my computer was plugged into the TV and I could make my name move across the screen, I say, "Mom, my name is on TV." And that's how I got
famous.
Yeah, I kind of got my start that way, and then making games. I was a huge Star Wars fan, so I tried to make my own Return of the Jedi video game. That was hit or miss in terms of how playable that was, but it was. But that's how I got my start in programming. And then when I got opportunities to do it in school, and then do it first junior high school, and then high school, and then college, I ended up with a bachelor's in computer science from Morehouse, and then a master's in computer science from Duke University. And so but it all started on a little TI 99 at home, and this young kid just trying to get his name to show up on TV.
It's amazing. It's amazing what those moments can do. And going back to like you're able to provide that moment for so many kids now, right? Like through those workshops with them walking away and creating something, that's literally the moment that it may or may not be, but it could be. That could be the moment that like sends them down a completely different career path that they never would have thought about. From a student learning perspective, I actually got a couple of my students in the chat. Zach is one of my students, and then Jason Oliver is one of the students as well. Xander's in the chat. What's up, Xander? I was wondering if maybe just from a learning perspective or from a student perspective, do you have any advice for people that are they could be in different stages of career or potential career, but for learning either on their own or through a boot camp, and then kind of thinking about working towards getting a job? Any general advice that you would give to people that are in those types of situations?
Sure. So some general advice with respect to learning and getting jobs. So on the learning side, not everyone learns the same way, right? So, for example, before our coding boot camp for adults opened, we knew that there were lots of online tools out there that a person could go, and if they were self-motivated and self-directed, enough that they could go and learn everything that we're teaching in our coding boot camp, right? But some people need a human touch, right? And some people get stuck and can't figure out how to get beyond something. You need to have someone to ask questions of, and so forth. And so I encourage people to find what works for them. Most of the people that come to our coding boot camp have already tried other means. They've already tried it online. They've already tried college, right? And it didn't work out for them, right? So find what works for you and get, try to be self-aware enough to understand your own learning style. And then when it comes to jobs, I'm a huge proponent of people making their networks as wide as possible, right? And so with COVID right now, it's a little different, right? But it's still possible. But before COVID, especially, and hopefully when things get back to normal, I would encourage people all the time, show up at hackathons, show up at technology accelerator events, and volunteer, or participate in some way, right? Because you get to know people that way in that context, and then when it comes time for when opportunities sprinkle along, an array of opportunities arrive.
Nicely done.
You might be remembered for an opportunity. And so 3 of our code school graduates from our first code school cohort all landed their jobs because they had volunteered in a smart city hackathon, and the founder of one of the startups remembered them from that and interviewed them, and they all got jobs. Right? And so so have that wide network. Always be keeping your skills fresh as best you can. It's impossible to study everything, but maybe follow some blogs or some YouTube channels and so forth in terms of some things of interest to you, so you can keep your skills fresh. But that network with humans, and they may not all be technical, but just be involved as you can in meetups and hackathons and accelerator events and things like that. I would strongly recommend, and then certainly keep your resume ready so that when you do meet someone and they ask you on the spot for your resume, you can get it to them before the night is over, at least. So that would be my general advice.
And just to add to that is don't let COVID stop you from doing it now. There's so many ways to do it. That's one of the beautiful things about this industry, especially, is there's so many communities. You could virtual meetups, virtual conferences, Slack channels, Discord servers, just Twitter. And like I use Twitter for all of my developer related stuff. There are lots of opportunities to do that now, and then certainly be ready as in-person opportunities open up as well. Then be ready to take advantage of those.
I just discovered Clubhouse too. I like to witness people get jobs on Clubhouse.
Oh, cool.
So,
I just got into it the other day. I haven't used it at all, so I still am kind of new to it, but maybe I will soon.
Yeah, so lots of things out there, but you're not a job isn't going to come to you, right? Just you sitting at home and not being plugged in and connected to other humans. You've got to, even if you're an introvert like me, you've got to just be out there and be part of a conversation. Yep.
Maybe one last question here from the chat as we wrap up. Jason Jolliver in the chat says, where do you go after a boot camp? He's feeling overwhelmed at the idea of learning front-end frameworks, back-end frameworks, data structures, algorithms. How do you know what should take priority in the learning process?
Sure. Great question. So, and some people tend to like front-end more. Some people tend to like back-end more. I'm probably more of a back-end kind of guy. But you mentioned data structures and algorithms. You're going to need that no matter what, right? So it is kind of hard to know. And that's where, some of the things I said about interacting with a human, whether you're in a boot camp or you're part of networks of people, user groups or meetups and so that sort of thing, just have those kinds of conversations. But in terms of where you go after a boot camp, I'd love to be able to tell you that you get snapped up immediately after finishing a boot camp. That's pretty uncommon, right? Most people are, most boot camps are measured though by how many people, whether or not you get some employment opportunity within 90 days of graduating or within 3 or 4 months of graduating, right? And so in that time, don't be discouraged, right? Keep working on your skills, keep working on projects, make those things publishable. In fact, put them out in GitHub so people can see the source for them, right? And do things like that. And again, follow those networking points I made earlier. I would highly recommend. And so it's not easy because you have some employers that if you don't have a college degree, they insist that you have a college degree, and they don't care if you graduated from a boot camp and you were the best of the class and so forth. I've seen that. Sadly, some employers shoot themselves in the foot that way, but some employers are that way, right? And but don't be discouraged because other employers are more open-minded. Startups especially are more open-minded about that sort of thing because they want to know what you can do. And so, so ultimately, stay engaged with the community after the boot camp and let that be active in your own pursuit of your next job opportunity, and then that will. Once you're there, be excellent at what you do, work hard, and show yourself valuable to your employer. So I can probably go on and on about that. And hopefully that answers most of your question there, Jason. I think you said right.
Yep. That was from Jason. Yeah, and a good point to not leave off the once you get that first job, it's not over. Now you're a professional and you have to continue to prove yourself in your career to continue to make progress. And that's something I talk about a lot, like the learning process. I tweeted about this morning. I think the learning process is never over. I've been a developer for 8 years or so, and I've given lots of talks and videos and all kinds of stuff. And I'm learning every day. I was watching a video on a new technology this morning from someone else. And I think a lot of it is just exposure. A lot of imposter syndrome comes from not knowing something, thinking that you should, and feeling bad about it, when really it's just about time and exposure. And if you come across something you don't know, you can spend a few seconds to think about, hey, does it actually make sense to learn? And if it does, go experiment with it. And if it doesn't, because you've got other thing that you're focused on, that's what's most important. So yeah, you'll never know it all. It's a constant process. You'll always be learning. And that's just how it is. So yeah, I think that was a great response to that question, and then a great summation of just where do you go? Well, one, while you're in the boot camp, when you finish, and then how do you continue on to kind of progress through your career?
Well, thank you, and I'll say that it's not all constant.
Variable. Down. Variable, yes.
Got two more in there. So.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of a let version of that. I don't have it. You should don't let the opportunities come to you. Go and get. I don't know. That's probably the worst one of that we've used.
I count it as valid.
Yes, thank you. Sam is always a good supporter of cheesy, non-working jokes of mine.
It's all a function of what you put into it.
It's all a function of the parameters that you put in.
Yep. And you spend the time, I say all the time, success is where opportunity meets preparation, but you got to know the methods.
I feel like you've done this before. You're a little too good at this.
Thank you. Take advantage when you're in class. So, never mind. I'll put it in there.
We should just take a 5-minute segment of that and post it somewhere of just how many of those can you get in?
Well, stay agile while you're doing it.
All right.